Welcome back to the Roads to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Josh Rhodes, and here we are, middle of February, closing in on my 1 year anniversary of the Roads to Wealth podcast. It has been a hell of a year, and I have some really cool episodes in the hopper here over the next couple of weeks. Even more so, some mind-blowing interviews booked for March and April. Several guests that are from my original hit list, the folks that I said if I could get them on, they would really move the needle, which obviously causes a little bit of pressure, a little bit of nervousness from my side, which has led me to start my preparation now, weeks in advance before their appearance. All of this is really exciting. I've gotten to this point, we have gotten to this point because of you all as the listeners and your continued support. Your interaction with the podcast has been crazy. I ran an interview yesterday where I'm almost positive that I could have put together the entire podcast outline. All of my questions could have been user submitted questions. And to me, that's absolutely incredible. Starting from creating everything myself to now having some back and forth, and some of you folks start to work with me on really taking this journey with me. And it's been really fun. If you are tuning in today for your first time, or you're just feeling generous and you haven't left a review, I'm tracking 100 podcast reviews for the year. I won't go into all the benefits on these podcast reviews here in the introduction, but know that those are extremely powerful for us in building and maintaining momentum for the podcast and continuing to book great guests. It's a good segue, great guests, into today's guest, which is Dylan Oeglein. Dylan is a high school dropout, starting his first business when he was 14 years old, selling cell phones. He used that hustle of selling cell phones to talk his parents first into homeschooling and shortly after into the total dropout. You'll hear today that Dylan is a starter and a student. A starter in that at one point he had north of 12 businesses in flight under his thumb of control at one time. It was bonkers. A student in that, like Bruce Lee, he learned from a mentor of his early that a successful man or warrior is an average man with laser-like focus. And as he narrows his focus down to just one business from that 12, Oeglein Digital, a digital agency, his success skyrockets, turning that business into a 7-figure agency in just under 3 years. With a journey like Dylan's, there is lots that I want to explore, lots of topics that I had jotted down that I wanted to cover. I could have easily made this a 3-4 hour podcast, and hopefully we will have him back in the future. But today, over the hour, you will hear us cover lots. What it sounds and feels like to drop out of high school, the conversation with your friends, your family, your mentors, what that just all feels like. How the early business exposure, selling cell phones at 13, 14 years old, set him up to be a business outlier in his later years. When you're a thinker or a starter like Dylan is, how you can test, win, and lose fast with your different business ideas. So you're not spending lots of capital and time on these different opportunities. And we wrap it up with the importance and the application of the Pareto principle, having him apply that 80-20 principle to his expertise in building an ad and working with different marketing teams. I will be back after the episode with just a quick wrap up. But with that, I bring to you Dylan Oeglein.
It's the road to the wealth. I do it for health. For my kids and my spouse. Financially sound.
One of the most fascinating stories or journeys that I've had the chance to learn about. I've really, really enjoyed the deep dive as I prepared for this. And so, even so much so, man, the last couple of days, I could feel my juices, I could feel myself getting amped up for the interview, right? So really, really appreciate you doing this, man. Thanks for being here.
Sure thing. I'm really glad to be here. Now you set the tone, the bar really high.
Yeah,
fascinating. Was that the term you used? Fascinating journey. Oh man, I'm sweating bullets over here.
Yeah, we don't play games, man. I'm going to hit you with the tee up. That's
yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. High expectation. You've been thinking about me for days. Ooh. Okay. All right. Let's do it. Let's do it, man.
I mentioned earlier, I've had the chance to explore lots of what you have going on. There are some really cool topics that I want to explore, but before we do anything of that nature, I want to catch the listeners up to speed. For the folks that live under a rock, they haven't heard your story. Can you kind of catch them up to speed? And I'd ask, you start somewhere in the early sort of cell phone business stage and you work us up to whatever you have going on today.
Sure. So I'll try to give you the 2-minute story or 1 minute, 60-second story. So when I was 14, I started my first business selling cell phones on eBay. For context, this is 2003, 2004, and the best cell phones this is like prior to iPhone and any of the good stuff that we have now. The best cell phones in the world were in Europe, and essentially I was exporting them to the United States, getting them at wholesale price, and then I'd flip them on eBay for like $50, $100 profit because you just couldn't get them in the United States yet. So that was the first business. That lasted for maybe a year or so. And then it got shut down because they found out my merchant account provider, my credit card processor, shut me down because they found out I was under the age of 18. So that was short lived. So yeah, that's where it all started. It was my very first business. Fast forward 12 or so years of pain and suffering and bouncing around, getting nowhere, having way too many projects, forgetting what sleep is like, dreaming about vacation, but never knowing what vacations are, not making any money from 14, 15, all the way till 26 or 27. Then I had a conversation with a long-term mentor. Again, I'm trying to keep this really condensed and short for you. And I just scrapped all of my projects, focused on one single service, which was digital marketing management, one single business. And that was pretty much it. Just focused on that. And that was 2016. 2017 hit multiple 6 figures with the business. And then 2018 was the first year doing 7 figures. So that's my main business now, is my digital agency. And then over the last year or so, I've put a lot of focus into my education company where I'm teaching people how to start their own digital agency. There's 15 years, and did I do it under 60? That wasn't 60 seconds.
It's close. That cell phone business early on, you mentioned you got caught. I put in quotations. You got caught, and the business had to go under. But if research serves me right, I mean it was a legit business. I mean, legit enough to where you decided to get out of school and take that full time, right, and start pursuing that.
It wasn't. I didn't quit school necessarily because of that. I think the fact that I actually had something. Like my best month, I was making like $1,500, $2,000. I might have had like 1 month where I made $3,000 or something. It was a long time ago. But that's what I sold my parents on. Like, because I had a little bit going for me, I was able to sell them on, hey, it wasn't like, hey, I'm in school and then boom, I'm dropping out. It was, let me do homeschool. Like, I got this, guys. Like, I can do homeschool and then I can like work on my business and like get things going there. And I had to sell them on it, but they bought it. And I had to pay for the homeschooling and everything. And I've been talking about this a lot recently, and I'm trying to remember. I don't even think I opened the box that had the books in it. I know I never opened the books, but I don't even think I opened the box. I think just it sat in a closet, and then eventually I just threw it away. But eventually once that lasted for like 6 months, and then I was like, all right, guys, just let me quit.
I was going to say, so at what age did you kind of hang the school books up?
I never finished 10th grade. I think officially I started doing homeschooling when I was 14 or 15, and you have to go through a process to officially drop out. And I think I was 16 when I officially dropped out.
And then you called, we're fast forwarding, right? And I'm jumping around a little bit, but you called today's business a digital marketing management company, right? So just broad stroke, what is that? What do you guys do today?
It's very simple. What we're doing is we're managing Facebook and Google ads, and sometimes YouTube, but mostly Facebook and Google ads for our clients. We write the ad, we design the landing page, and then we choose like what to target and things like that, especially with Facebook and like what keywords with Google. That's pretty much what we're doing. And then we charge our clients a 10% fee of whatever their spend is. So if they spend $20,000 in a month, we send them an invoice for $2,000. That's what we do.
And do you guys specialize? Do you have a specific vertical? You only work with service businesses or only manufacturers, or do you have a vertical you work with?
Most of our clients, which I only have it's under 7 clients, varies during the course of the year because some of them are seasonal, or most of them are in home services. There's been few other clients that we've had over the years where, just previously I had worked with them or they just found us and I was like, okay, it seems like it's a good fit. But most of them in the home service industry, construction, manufacturing types of firms.
Gotcha. You're able to hear, and I've studied you a bunch now, and you hear your story in one big swoop like this, and it's kind of overwhelming, right? Like people go through their entire lives and they climb this ladder of what you're supposed to do, right? They go to high school, then they go to college, and then they get their MBA and they enter the workforce and they grind 40 plus years trying to build this independence. And no disrespect at all, but a high school dropout is able to take his agency from 0 to 7 figures in what sounds to be 4 or 5 years, right? So I think that the question I want to ask, and let me go a little bit further here, but what the hell were you doing, right? Like, did you have mentorships? Did you have co-founders or advisors? Were you taking masterminds or master classes? Like, thinking back, what would you attribute your ability to scale and to ramp so quickly to?
So I didn't have a founder. I didn't have a partner with the agency. I did have mentorship. I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for the teachers, coaches, mentors that I've had along the way. I'm also in currently masterminds where you have mastermind groups where I'm just able to bounce ideas off of people. I think kind of an interesting way we could go at this is for me, whenever I was, I finally got it to click, I was 26, 27. I had been working for like 12 or 13. I had 12 or 13 years of experience at that time.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of experience built up. So, whenever I was making the leap, like, okay, like bringing on team members, it was like, well, I've done that before. Handling marketing. Well, I've done that before. Like there were things that, again, I had so many years of experience. Did it move very quickly? Once it clicked and it ramped up very quickly, yes, absolutely. But there was all these years of experience that came before that. The reason I went in that angle was that was kind of one of the reasons I quit school, because we kind of have to back up with my story a little bit here to really understand the context. So for me, when I was like 12 or 13, I wanted to go to college. I was starting to think about college and like, what do you want to do with your life? And I had interest in just business. I had no idea what it looked like. I didn't really know what, but it was just like, like the business world. And college just wasn't like, unless I got a scholarship, like it just wasn't going to happen. Like my parents couldn't afford to send me to any kind of college. On top of that is I also come from like a nothing town, and I was told all my life, like it was beat into me by people that like, you're not smart enough. You're never going to get a scholarship based on your grades or because you're really smart. Like it was a limiting belief at the time. So for me, kind of the pathway to college was hockey. I wasn't that good. I'm still terrible. But I was like, if I just really work hard at this, maybe I can get some kind of scholarship or a full ride, even if it's to some crappy college. Like that's my ticket out of here. And I'll never forget, I was 12 or 13 when it happened. I was at a varsity game, and I remember seeing there was like this prep school from the Pittsburgh area, and the players were just so much better than I was. Like they were leaps and bounds ahead of me. And what I realized is that, well, the common theme with these players that are so much better than me is that they've been playing longer than me. Like I started playing when I was like 10. They started playing when they were 5, which when you're that age, like that's a colossal difference. And at 12 or 13, I kind of started to see this vision of like, the key to me getting out of here is to start early at something, because I'm from a nothing town. I've been told my whole life that I'm not special, that I'm not smart. There's no way my parents can afford to send me to college like I need to get some kind of leg up. You know, like these players, their leg up is that they just started early.
Sure.
So I just saw at that age, like if I get started in business now, again, I didn't know what the path would be. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew like if I start now, 10, 15 years from now, I'll be 10 to 15 years ahead of everybody else. People will be getting out of college. They'll be starting their first business. And I'll be like, I've been doing this stuff for like 12 years.
Yeah.
That was, I don't even know where I was going with that. I just think understanding that context is huge.
The logic makes a lot of sense. And you're kind of headed where I wanted to take you in that, I mean, you thought, okay, I need to get an early start. Let me get running out of the gate here. And so you take off. And if I read your sort of timeline right, as you started building businesses, you got to this point to where you were sort of stretched thin, right? You had 10, 12, 15 businesses in flight at one time. And so you were definitely getting a leg up, but maybe in the worst way, right? Because you weren't really making any progress. You were doing a lot of nothing, right? Because you're spread so damn thin. And when I asked you earlier of like, what the hell were you doing? Like, how did you differentiate yourself? How did you find this success? Because people put themselves in this process or this rat race of 50 years and they don't find it. So how did you do it? One of the things that I've extracted from your story is this idea of focus and being hyper focused. And you hinted at this story earlier, and I'm going to ask that you tell it. At one point, you had 10, 12 businesses in flight, and you had this mentor give you a call and say, listen, man, you got to focus up, tighten up, right? And so can you maybe share that story with us and maybe how that went about that moment?
Yeah. So one of those moments in life I'll never forget. This was end of 2016. So it's November 2016. Like you said, I was 10 plus different business projects, getting absolutely nowhere, making maybe 40 to 50 grand a year, up to my eyeballs in debt. Sleep was a nice fantasy to have. I didn't know what vacations were. It was bad. And randomly got this call from a long-term mentor of mine. Hadn't spoken to him in a while. And, we catch up. We exchange pleasantries. It's like, oh, how you doing? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. How you doing? And I lie and I say, oh, things are great. But he sees through that. And eventually, I admit, I'm like, I'm getting nowhere. I'm struggling. My life sucks. I'm not making any money. I'm busting my ass, but I thought I would be further than this. I thought the key was just really work hard. How come I'm not getting anywhere? And the advice he gave to me was stop trying to build an airline and start drilling for oil. That was just the quote. And the context, what he meant was, you're trying to build all these small little businesses that might make you a couple hundred or maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month. Those are your airlines. And like the best in the world get into that industry and they still don't make money. It's just a notoriously difficult industry to make money. Instead, drill for oil, start a business or focus on the business where you can just be kind of sort of okay at it and still make a lot of money, and just focus on one single thing. That was the lesson. That's all it was. And I remember I was walking out in front of my house. It was freezing. It was late at night. I remember what I was looking at when he's giving me this advice. Like, it was that transformative to me. And I've described it before as like the solution was right in front of my face, but I was so blinded that I couldn't see it because it was right in front of my face.
Yeah.
So it was like this metaphorical slap across the face. And literally that night, I went downstairs into my freezing basement and I didn't even have a chair. I sat on a bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket, because I couldn't afford a chair. And I just started deleting. If it wasn't currently making money, I just deleted it. I would just take the folder, take the project, and literally delete it. And then there was a few things that were making maybe a couple $100 a month. It was like, I'm going to let that run, but I'm not going to give it a second of my attention going forward. And the one thing I focused on that I saw had the potential to scale and I could just be okay at it and I could hit my goal of 6 figures was focusing on digital marketing management.
That's what I was going to ask you is
that's all it was.
Yeah. You had 12, 15 businesses in flight and then you start, I'm literally picturing you going through files and deleting, right? And the last one standing is digital marketing management. I wanted to ask why that? And it sounds like it had the most potential upside. You had the ability I can scale out to, I think you said at the top of the call, I have 7 clients and it could be a 7-figure agency. So you don't have to be the best in the business to make that kind of money. Am I hearing you right? Is that how we've got to this avenue?
That's exactly what it was. I didn't have the vision of 7 figures at that time.
Yeah, of course.
It was, but I looked at the projects and most of them were like the best of the best were making $5,000 a month at this. My goal was 6 figures. Like in my mind, like if I hit 6 figures, I would solve all my problems.
Sure.
So I just kept looking at them, and the digital marketing, it was the one where the best of the best were making 7 or 8 figures a year. If I'm just like okay at that, I'm probably going to be able to hit 6 figures. It can scale. There's a ton of clients. I had one client at the time who was paying me maybe a little under $1,000 a month or something. And I was like, if just all lined up. And I was like, if I just focus on this one thing, I'll get better and better at it, which is one of the things my mentor said. He's like, if you just focus on one thing, you're going to get better and better and better at it. It's like, if I get better at this and I onboard more clients, it can scale up. And like, it doesn't need to scale up that much for me to hit 6 figures. And that's what it was. It was the one that stuck out as the drilling for oil, the one that it was a high profit margin and it could scale very quickly. That's all it was.
One of the questions that I've been chewing on the last couple of days, I'm interested in your answer here, is you're a starter, you're an entrepreneur and a business starter at heart. Like that's in your blood. It's proven. I mean, most people don't open 10, 12 businesses in their lifetime, and you had them in flight at once, right? So it's like, yeah, all these projects going on. Then you get this advice from your mentor of, you need to cage that dog and you need to focus up and stop chasing cars and find something you can run with. My question to you is, talk to me about your mindset and your approach to new business opportunities today, right? Because this is sort of 2 things. One, opportunities, people with ideas run or flow to people with money, right? And so now that you've seen some success, I'm assuming you see opportunities. And the other part of this is you almost can't help yourself, right? Like you're always coming up with opportunities or potential business ideas yourself. And so how do you cage that dog? And then what questions or conversations are you having with yourself before you decide to pursue a new opportunity?
This is a very good question. So I'm going to back up a little bit with that and say, for me, it had reached a tipping point. I had spent so many years going in the wrong direction, where it just absolutely suffering, where I was able to, I can't think of a better term, but quit it cold turkey.
Yeah.
And be like, I'm going in the other direction as hard as I possibly can. Because, a lot of people, they recognize that focus matters, and they recognize, I think there's this famous video, I think it's Steve Jobs. He said the thing that he's most proud of that Apple has done is the things that they have said no to. There's a documentary on Bill Gates where him and Bill, I'm going to condense this story here, but him and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett meet, and they're asked to write down separately on a piece of paper the one thing that led to their success. And without any communication, they both write down focus. I could go on and on with all these stories of, it's obvious that focus matters. What is the filter that I kind of apply now? It is very simple. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a no.
Yeah.
If it's like, wow, that's a pretty good idea. Before, I would spend a bunch of time starting that business and probably getting nowhere. If it's not like, hell yes, that is the coolest idea, or I am so passionate about that business, then the answer is no. And the only thing that has met that threshold for me is my education company. That's it. And there's, it's like you said, like I'm just walking around. There's like, oh, that's an idea. And that's an idea. Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that.
They do, for sure.
So I'm not special in that regard, but putting that filter and saying no to things is an incredibly important muscle to build. So if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. Yeah.
And your ability, and I'm somewhat segueing here to another topic, but your ability to win fast, lose fast with the potential opportunity, right? So as you started this business here and you've scaled it to 7 figures, you started in this mode that you've sort of coined lean, mean, and scrappy, right? So you had no website, no logo. Is that right? Am I reading that right?
That is 100% correct. Because I had spent so much time suffering.
Yeah.
When I decided, okay, I'm just going to focus on this one thing, I naturally was like, okay, like that night when I deleted everything, I was like, oh, I need to go build a website. I need to go get a nice business card and a nice logo, build out a phone system. That's naturally how I thought because I'm a perfectionist. I want everything to look good and be nice. But because I spent so much time suffering, I was just ruthlessly no. I just said no to everything. Like I only want to focus absolute bare minimum. So there was no website. There was no professional voiceover phone system. There was nothing. I didn't even have the Ogline Digital name until the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
Just as bare bones simple as possible because I didn't want to, because I was battling that perfectionist demon in me.
Yeah. Earlier, I asked like how you scaled so quickly. And I want to ask a similar question to the business here of you had no website, no logo. So you're not working through SEO or there are other tactics that we've heard about in the past on the podcast that people use to start building their funnel. With no website, no logo, you didn't have that. And so I'm curious, I mean, what sort of black magic were you operating under with your roof? Talk to me through maybe your milestones and then what you felt contributed to your spikes in success.
Sure. So it's already had one client who I was making a couple $100 off of. And then I simply just reached out to previous clients that I worked with. So during, my years of suffering, I had maybe built some websites for people. I had built logos for people, banner ads. I had done other agency type of work. So I just reached out to those previous clients and was like, hey, now I'm offering this service. And I think I onboarded one or two clients that way. And then I just reached out to other businesses in the home services vertical and just simply being niched down and being able to talk about their problems and not being like, hey, we're a full service agency. Like going to an example I always use because it's a real example with my agency is reaching out to plumbing and heating companies and being like, we specifically help plumbing and heating companies grow and get more install projects with direct response digital marketing. That's like a quote from one of the landing pages eventually.
Yeah.
I'm hitting it all right there. That's kind of what the quote unquote black magic was. It was just, I just ruthlessly applied that focus to not just the business, but then to the client outreach. I wasn't reaching out to everybody. Once I had, capped out the low hanging fruit, I call it, like the clients that I previously worked with, when I was reaching out to new people who I'd never heard from, I ruthlessly focused there. It was just certain verticals, a very specific message. It wasn't, hey, we're a full service agency. We can help anybody with everything. It was, we specifically help your type of business with just this one specific problem. That was the quote unquote black magic. And then because I was just focusing on one service with a few similar niches, just doing at the time Facebook and Google ads, I got really, really good at it. So then the results in my particular business, as the client starts to get better results, they increase their ad spend. Well, as they increase their ad spend, I make more off of them.
Sure.
It's as simple as that. And they don't have a problem with paying me more because it's a percentage of their ad spend. And if they are getting a profitable ROI off their ad spend, they don't care if they're paying me $1,000 a month or $15,000 a month. They don't care because they probably have the same ROI at 1 as they will at 15, which is random numbers I'm coming off the top of my head. But that was it. I know it's not like this sexy answer and really complicated business strategy, but it was just, I'd spent so much time suffering that I just ruthlessly applied focus to absolutely everything. And that was it. That was what I needed.
And I think that's what I wanted to maybe shine a light on is how simple it can be. I'm a perfectionist at heart as well. And I spent, even before launching this podcast, I spent like 6 months doing all my research and figuring out what mic I wanted to use and building a hit list and building a website and trying to figure out the jingle before the intro. And it's like all this shit, right? And so decide, okay, I'm going to get hyper focused on this business. Let me reach out to any clients that I've done work with in the past, whether I've just built a banner, I've built one-off ad, I've helped build their website or written some copy. Let me go try to line clients that way. you landed a couple, one or two of them. Obviously, you try to work through referrals, you try to leverage that. And then the second idea is now I've landed a few clients, I have some case studies, I have some examples that I can tap into. I'm also hyper niche. Both my clients are in the, like you mentioned, the plumbing space or whatever that is. And then you have the ability to niche down and really get hyper focused with your outreach in this cold prospecting avenue. This is sort of hinting at where I wanted to go next. And as you were getting started, there were sort of two hot buttons. Obviously, your cold outreach. I think SEO it was hot at the time and writing for Google was a thing. Not to say that that approach is now dead, but we've had bloggers and folks that have sold their blogs on the podcast, and it's definitely a more saturated market. Folks are looking for more creative ways to get in front of or find new audiences. And so recently we interviewed Craig Mount from Nerdy Nuts, and Craig is making $500,000 a month off of peanut butter. And yeah, it's insane. And the two tactics that he's leveraging is this Supreme style drop where he only drops peanut butter on Sundays. And then the other thing that he does is he has two influencers on TikTok. So most of his advertising, most of his dollars are going into TikTok, right? Rather than writing blog posts and trying to capture this SEO traffic and do these things. So where I'm headed with this is understanding that the SEO approach is more saturated, and you being in this digital marketing management space, I wanted to put the ball in your court one time and kind of ask the generic question of like, where are things headed, right? If you were to come in and work with an organization today, would you pull the first lever of let's start working on SEO? Would you pull the lever of let's try to go viral with an ad? Like, where would you spend your time?
I hate the idea of going viral. If it happens, cool. But otherwise, don't try to go viral. The reason SEO and content marketing are appealing is because most of the time there's very little cost. But if there's very little cost, I mean, that sounds great. There's little barrier to entry. What you lose though is kind of the ability to scale up. So let's say you create some blog post that goes viral or some YouTube video that you create for free and it goes viral and you get a bump in business. That's cool. That's awesome. Do it again. You probably can't. Or if you can, you really struggle with it. Whereas with, say, Facebook and Google ads, you just, you get a campaign to work. I'm oversimplifying here. Like if you're spending $100 a day, you just add another zero, or you just double your budget and you're probably going to double your results. Of course, the problem is that you're spending money on it. So for me, I don't focus on like TikTok as an example. I don't focus on that because the people that get it to work now, they're probably they randomly went at bat and hit a home run their first at bat.
Sure.
It's just luck. It's just like somebody who creates a Dollar Shave Club. Okay. So they did that ad. They probably spent like $5,000 on it, which is not a lot for a commercial. And for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, just Google like Dollar Shave Club commercial and look for the first one. It's gorgeous. It's a great ad. It's hilarious. He just so happened to go at bat his first time and hit a home run and build a company off of it. And that sounds appealing to people because relatively speaking, the cost is low. But the problem is that it's really difficult to duplicate and to scale it up. Whereas once you get Google ads or Facebook ads, these tried and true methods, once you get them working, scaling up isn't a problem. You just add another zero, or you double your budget, or you triple your budget, and you can purchase growth. So if I'm working with a new client, sure, SEO is a worthwhile investment, but it should be like it should be like a company adding a logo to their trucks that drive around town. Are you going to get clients from it? Probably. And cool. And you should do that. If you have a truck driving around town, you should add your logo to it. If you have a website, you should probably be putting some blog articles out. Like, it doesn't hurt to do those things. But that shouldn't be your bet. That shouldn't be what you're aiming to get your growth from. It should be icing on the cake, extra that comes in.
I've heard you hint at, and I'm going to get there in a couple questions, but I've heard you hint at before, once you have product market fit and you know you're chasing legit opportunity, the very next thing that you need to do is button up and figure out the marketing team, the marketing component of this, right? And start to build some what you call faucets. I'll get there in a second, but first, let me ask you this. I kind of hinted at earlier this idea of win fast, lose fast. And this is something that I've really enjoyed of yours and I've kind of taken to heart is this idea. If you have an opportunity you'd like to pursue, spend a few $100s and look to find or see if there's a product market fit. Look to see if there's demand for that product. Let me just put that in your court. Can you expand on that idea a bit?
Yes. All the listeners out there, you kind of have to adjust this to what your particular product or service is. A perfect example is now that I have my own training program, I've met other people who have training programs, or I just mention it and they're like, oh yeah, I was working with a photographer recently. And, she asked like, what do you do? And I mentioned, like, oh, I have this agency and then I'm working on my education company. I have a training program. She's like, oh, I'm looking to do that too. And, we started talking about it and she's been spending like 6 months building out the program. That's not what you want to do. Like in her particular case, she's building out this training program. Think like how photographers can get more like wedding clients, something like that. And what you want to do is spend a couple $100s to prove that there are actually photographers out there who are looking to take that program, looking to buy that product or that service. In this case, it's a training program. You don't want to spend 6 months, a year, 2 years building out the actual product. And then you go to sell it. And then you find out that nobody actually wants it.
Yeah, you're chasing a hobby.
Yeah. Whereas if you actually go out and the best way, the most efficient way to do this is just do some Google ads, put it out there in the marketplace and see if people are actually willing to give you money.
Yeah.
So in her particular example, like I told her, like go home tonight and start doing like some Google ads or Facebook ads, build a quick landing page and actually get people to check out and give you money. Don't ask them. You don't want to reach out to people and ask, say, hey, will you buy this training program? Or hey, will you buy this product or service? Because people will lie to you. Okay. Because people are really nice.
Yeah.
They don't want to hurt your feelings. But if you ask somebody like, hey, will you buy this product or service? And they say yes. And then you're like, well, cool. Can I take your credit card information?
They're like, hold up a second. We're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they actually give you money, then you have product market fit. And then on top of that, like in her particular case, I told her, actually go and sell it. If you get people to actually give you money, then you have product market fit. But then if they gave you money, like you have to deliver the product now and be upfront with people. Be like, I'm starting the program next week or 2 weeks from now, or I'll be able to deliver the product. If you're actually selling a physical product, I'll be able to deliver the product next month, something like that. Don't lie to people. We're not scamming people. And if you don't deliver it, then you just simply refund them. But because you actually got somebody to give you money, then you're going to bust your ass to actually deliver it because you don't want to fail.
Yeah.
Whereas you spent the last 6 months to a year just building out a product that you don't know that the market wants. One other really important factor here, everybody knows about pivoting, right? Well, the reason pivoting is so painful is that you have all this work that you have put into something. If you've spent a year building out a training program and then you go to sell it into the marketplace and say she finds out that wedding photographers don't need more clients, but high school graduation photographers need more clients. Well, she needs to pivot and build an entirely different training program. That's painful. But if you've never built it, pivoting is no big deal.
Yeah. What you're talking through, how to test the market. I spent probably 20 minutes with the founder of the crowdfunding formula. His name's Nedik Varanyan, and they're the world's...
That's an interesting name.
Yeah, they're the world's best crowdfunding agency. They've raised over $1 million 15 separate times. They're the real deal. And he came on and talked about this exact model that you're describing, and he called it jungle proofing. And it was this idea of let's build 3 web pages, and the first one's going to have my product's copy and a video, and at the very bottom, just a buy now link. And if they watch the video, they read the copy, and they like what they see, they'll press the button. And they're able to test, is our copy, is our video, is all this shit good? And then the next page, they see the pricing for the product, and they're able to click buy now. And if they hit that, they know their pricing is on point. And they're able to go up, go down, do some A/B testing, all that stuff. And then the final page, it asks, put in your credit card information and email address. And so they're punching that in. And this is the true test, right? To your point of that mother-in-law test of, are you just saying you want to buy this, or are you going to put your money where your mouth is? And then at that point, if they put their credit card information in, they get a pop-up and it's like, hey guys, sorry, we're out of order. Or like you said, this is going to be built in 2 months. Please put in your email address. We'll keep you up to date, get you a discount code or whatever. And then they're able to find, they're getting all this demographic data. They're able to see who wants to buy the product. Is it male, female, what age, where are they sitting, all this stuff. They're able to see, is there demand and how much, how many orders are they getting and things like that. It's really, really cool. And so are you talking through a similar process? Did I miss anything? Do you have any riffles or anything else to add? Anything else there?
Well, if you're just a solopreneur, you're just working by yourself, pulling that all off, it's going to be a little bit, it's a beast. Yeah. Like that's intensive right there.
Yeah.
That's just the more advanced. If you have the resources and the time and the know-how to pull that off, go that extra step. I've actually copied from Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Workweek. He mentions, I think in that particular book, he mentions like the testing process that he used to name the 4-Hour Workweek. He just threw up some Google ads and saw which ones had the highest click-through rate. That's how I came up with the name for Agency 2.0. I literally just put up some Google ads and the keywords were like, start my own digital agency or something like that, and just would run the ad to just a landing page on my website that just, hey, please give me your email address. So I'm at least getting people's email addresses. But all I was looking for was just the click-through rate on the name.
Totally.
That was it. And whichever one had the high click-through rate, boom, that's how I chose the name of the program. There's multiple variations that you can do to test. And, we talked about, you mentioned earlier, failing fast. It's all about failing as fast as possible, to throwing things up and seeing which ones stick. And like you mentioned, like that guy sounds like that's a beast of a system.
Yeah.
And that sounds fantastic. It doesn't necessarily need to be that. Again, if you have the know-how, you have the resources to pull that off, do that.
Yeah, what you laid out is perfect, man. If none of your ads get hits, then obviously it's a shitty idea, right? And it's time to scrap it. If one of those ads is performing really, really well, then you've found your faucet. I'm smiling here because you mentioned the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek. I had one more topic I wanted to dive into here. And this is, I've digested lots of your material. And one of the things that I feel comes up more often or more frequently than not is the Pareto principle. This idea of 80-20. And you first crossed paths with that, if I read right, in Tim Ferriss's book, right? The 4-Hour Workweek, which it encapsulates a lot. Tim Ferriss writes hefty books. They're like Bibles.
Yeah.
But
I got all of them right over there.
the bulk of that 4-Hour Workweek, at the root of it, it is that Pareto principle. It's that 80-20 principle. Can you maybe talk through that and maybe a use case or two, a time you've applied that, just to give a little bit of color, context?
And to be honest, man, I apply that now. So for those of you who don't know, the 80-20 principle is essentially this commonality that you will find in like every area of your life where 20% of your, say, effort gets you 80% of your results. 80% of your effort gets you 20% of your results. So most of your time or your effort is wasted. You'll notice if you have carpet in your house, you'll notice that 20% of your carpet has 80% of the wear. Again, this applies to so many areas of life. And in the 4-Hour Workweek is when I was kind of introduced to that. And I looked around at my life and I was like, damn, like there's a lot of stuff that I'm just wasting my time on that's actually not making the cash register ring. It's not actually producing any income. It's not moving the business forward. There's so many examples that it's tough for me to actually, because now it's gotten to the point where I apply that subconsciously. I don't even think about applying that because I'm just constantly looking for like, is this thing that I am working on actually moving the needle, or is this just wasted work?
This may be the same question, but where I wanted to take this potentially is knowing you're wearing that 80-20 principle. I try to implement that lots as I chug along in my life. But when you take on a new client and you're going to start implementing some of their social strategies and you're going to start building ads and working with them, where do you find that they're wasting most of their time, right? Are there processes? Are they doing things within your realm that their spending cycles on, or it's wasted time, wasted processes, wasted strategies?
Most of the time, what I get a vision into is their kind of marketing budget or whatnot. And most of the time, because they're kind of blue collar businesses, it's they're doing, say, and this isn't necessarily 80/20, but they're doing, say, like billboard ads because it's just what they've always done. And they're like, well, we noticed that if we slowed our spending down, our business slowed down. And it's like, well, you can't necessarily track that. And you don't actually know if you're getting results from that. So this could actually be an answer here that would be insightful. So I mentioned before, like plumbing and heating companies, work with several of those. One of the things, kind of like the advantage or kind of the niche strategy that I use there is that I'll talk to them about install projects. And this is simply because I've known people in the industry and I've worked in that industry to know that with plumbing and heating companies, they make more money off of install projects. They're easier. The clients are easier to deal with. You're not coming out 10 times to try to diagnose a repair. They like those projects more than, say, repairs. So when I talk to them and I'm like, we help you get more install projects, just because I know that, they kind of figure that I have the solution because I'm able to define the problem better than they can.
Totally.
But where I'm getting with this is that I'm able to talk to them and be like, say you have billboards that you're running and they're probably talking about repairs because you get more calls off of repairs because more people need repairs than they do installs. But it takes like 10 repairs for you to make the same amount as you do off of one install. So even if the amount of customers you have gets cut in half, if you're doing more install projects, you're going to make more money.
Yeah.
So when we work with in that particular industry, as an example, we will focus solely all of the marketing efforts on just install projects because that's where the profit margin is. It might be 10-1. They might get the number of clients might drop and customers might drop for one of our clients, but their profitability goes up because 20% of their efforts were generating 80% of their profits before.
Yeah. You've found your clients 20%, right? That's where their profits and their fun, the easiest clients to work with. And you're focusing on that. And I think one, it shows target, two, it shows niche and expertise, and you talking about their pain points and what they like to do, and you hinting at the terminology, using their buzzwords and getting in their field. That niche down approach has got to give you lots of success. As I hear you talk about, and I know I'm almost at my time here, man, you've scaled this digital marketing agency, this digital marketing management agency up to 7 figures. I'd be a fool not to at least capture some of your big takeaways when it comes to building an ad, right? And maybe the core components of an ad. And so I don't have any questions here. I want to kind of put this as a pro tip and just see what you give me. And what is most important when you're sort of building out the core pieces or core components of an ad, right? Is it the attention grabber? Do you always have a call to action? Lots of colors. Or I even heard earlier, it was on Monday, of a copywriting course where they said if you put this red circle around something in an ad, right? If you just have a red circle around, like if someone's holding a pen and you put a red circle around it, for some reason that gets more clicks. And so maybe that's your trick. Like I'm curious, do you have anything that each industry is different, each company is different, but do you have core components? I'm looking for that 20%.
The 20%.
Yeah, that you carry from ad to ad to ad. Is there something there?
Yes. So this is a fantastic question. And I love that you gave me the red circle to use. The red circle, these copywriting tricks, these little cheat codes that people are looking for, the secret thing in Facebook for targeting, all of that stuff. That's the 80% that are going to give you 20% of the results. You will spend so much time on the advanced stuff that will move the needle, but very little. I prefer to stick to the 20% that are going to get you the 80% of the results. So for me, I don't know how many things I'm going to list here, but I'm going to start with at least 2. The first one is when you can define the customer's problem better than they can, they will automatically assume that you have the solution. So kind of the perfect example there is with the plumbing and heating companies. I'm not talking about just getting them more customers. I'm talking about I'm going to get you more install projects. That's a very slight difference. And I've had where they ask me, well, what about repairs? I'm like, well, we've worked with people in your industry, and I know that in your industry, you're going to be making more money off of install projects. I just defined the problem better than they could. So if you can do that, the person will just automatically assume that you have the solution. So when at all possible, with ad copy or in the ad, on the landing page, anything like that, if you can write that content in a way where you can define the problem, get specific with it, and define it better than the end customer can, that will psychologically make them think that you have the solution. So that's 20% strategy that I would use. Another one that I use is I like to say that we write ads to get people to not click on them. A lot of people think they want the highest click-through rate. They want as many people as possible to click on their ad. They want that big, bold headline to catch people's attention. And there's a lot to be said about that. But if you are we're working with people who are selling kind of a more expensive, or they're mid to high tier in the market. They're not the cheapest solution. So you don't want the people who are looking for the cheapest solution to be clicking on your ad. You're wasting your ad dollars. Then if they actually do submit the form or whatever, you're wasting your time talking to those people. You want the people who are already looking for the mid to high tier solution. So the easiest way to do that is actually put pricing in your ad.
Nice.
So I'm trying to think of an example that everybody could wrap their head around. Let's say you're a car company and say you're Tesla. Okay. Tesla's cars start at what, 50 grand?
Sure. Yeah.
You're not competing with Chevy Cruze. So you would want to put in your ad something like pricing starts at 50,000.
Gotcha.
You could be a plastic surgeon and you could put our pricing starts at $5,000. You could be a roofing company. Our pricing starts at $25,000, which I don't know what plastic surgeons or roofing companies charge. I'm just randomly making this stuff up. But because you do that, you're pushing away the people that are looking for the cheap solution.
Yeah, you're allowing them to disqualify themselves, right? The folks that make it through the funnel and into your inbox, those are legit leads that are coming from sort of the hottest segment of your vertical, right? Like the leads could not be any hotter. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So like another quick example here is if we're looking to get more clients and we put a Google ad or something like that, we will write in the ad minimum ad spend $5,000 a month. So some plumbing and heating company that's looking, to do a $500 a month billboard ad, that $5,000 is way out of their price range. And that's okay. They probably aren't ready to work with us yet.
Totally.
I'm not writing an ad to get everybody. I want the segment of the market, the top of the buying pyramid, that are looking to buy now and are in my price range.
Yeah.
That would be my 20%.
Yeah, dude. And killer info there, man. I'm going to let us wrap up on that. I probably have another 12 questions that I'm looking at here that I'll save for round 2 after this thing goes public. For the folks that want to follow you, man, they want to join you on your journey, consume your material, all that good stuff. Where's the best place to find you?
Dylan Ogline, pretty much everywhere. My website is dylanogline.com. And you can find me on the Instagram and the Facebooks, etc., at Dylan Ogline.
Cool. I will have your website, all the social. I have everything linked in our show notes. There's actually a full podcast transcript on my website at roadstowealth.com. So that's how I take notes and sort of keep up with the past episodes as I go back to the reading of it versus listening to them. Dylan, man, I appreciate you doing this, brother. You're the real deal. I know you're spread really thin, even though you're hyper-focused, still spread thin. I appreciate your time, even more so for the listeners. For you all tuning in, really, really appreciate your support, your ears. Give someone a hug this week and stay on your grind. This has to be one of the more impressive, powerful stories that we've heard on the show, particularly his emphasis and messaging around that idea of focus. One of my favorite quotes, it's something that I will definitely
use in future episodes, if it is not a hell yes, then it needs to be a no. There were dozens of other takeaways that I found within the podcast. I've done my best to capture them all and turn that into a PDF. I currently send that PDF out to a group of you subscribers. If you're interested in being added to that list and you want to start to compile this list of notes that I'm compiling, please feel free to reach out. You can get me at my email. You can also find me at the website, roadstowealth.com. A couple of those takeaways that I have flow together rather nicely. I wanted to maybe offer up an additional resource or two. So let me just kind of jog through those really quickly and put a bow on things. First, I think it sticks out like a sore thumb. This idea of starting early is so important, right? And Dylan first realized this with the hockey incident. There were folks on his team or that he played against that had started 5 or 6 years earlier. And because of that, their skill set, they seemed to be 5 or 6 times better, right? They were just profoundly better with their skill set. And that advice of start early, it applies across the board to all fields and all studies. Build your expertise. If you have not read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, I would highly recommend you check that out as he talks through some of these same concepts in the first few chapters of the book. This idea of to become an expert, you have to have over 10,000 hours of high-level practice of that particular craft. This is across the board through sports and mindsets and skill sets. Dylan would be considered an outlier because he got started with his business while most of us were still thinking about being astronauts, right? No clue what we were going to do with ourselves at 13, 14 years old. And Dylan was already learning what businesses could and couldn't do, how to hire and fire people, the logistics and shipping. He's buying and selling cell phones at 13, 14 years old. Because of that, he learned the ropes really early. It's been a couple of years since I read the book, but I believe that it actually starts with hockey players as well, which is really, really ironic. So start early, and then you can't start everything early is my second one. You can't start everything early. Just take one thing and run with that. Right, reiterating and emphasizing this idea of focus and how he went from 13 or 12 businesses to 1. And that's when things took off. Finally, take, use, implement, reflect on, and implement the Pareto principle. I use this more than any other mental model that I have in my bank. I form my questions around it. I form my daily activities around it. I cannot tell you how powerful this thing is. There are dozens of entrepreneurs that have written about this. You can find books, you can find blogs, you can find podcasts. This is a very real thing, and it's something that I think everyone should be implementing. I would first, if this is the first time that you've heard of the idea, you've heard of the framework, and you're interested in doing a deep dive, I would recommend you check out the 80-20 principle. It's written by Richard Koch. I don't believe Richard actually came up with the idea or the theory. He read about it himself, but does a phenomenal job at breaking this thing down and shows sort of across the US and all sorts of verticals, business and not, how the 80-20 principle applies. And it's insane. That's all I have for you guys this week. As I mentioned, I've got the notes. I'm happy to send you everything that we've discussed, the transcript, the resources, all of that can be found at my website. If you are still listening, please leave me a review. I'm shooting for the 100 this year. That could be on iTunes or wherever you guys are tuning in. And until next week, stay on your grind.
So smooth, you know what I'm saying? Q1 made the beat, by the way, just to let y'all know what's going on. Tell them, it's the road to the wealth, yeah. I do it for health, yeah. It's the road to the wealth, yeah. With my kids and my spouse, yeah. It's the road to the wealth, I do it for health, yeah. With my kids and my spouse, yeah. I'm financially sound, it's the road to the wealth, yeah. I do it for health, yeah. With my kids and my spouse, financially sound. If life about purpose, it give you something to say again. I've been setting cash goals, financially speaking. I've been finding blessings through all of these demons. I pray to God, I give you something to reach with. Say I give you something to leave with. This life about goals and achievements. Your eyes on the prize, they hate out your mind. They pray to whatever beliefs in. Teach on the way, know that the beach on the way. Gotta shine hard in the teacher's water. Know that little seed, they gon' grow tomorrow. So every day, gotta come with us. Shit. So they give you something to stand on. Make the false off when you land raw. Make you put some new friends on. It's the road to the world. I do it for help. Yeah. My kids and my spouse. Yeah. I'm financially sound. Bad dad. It's the road to the wealth. Yeah. I do it for help. Yeah. My kids and my spouse. Yeah. I'm financially sound. You the bad dad.